Ridiculous Crime is a production of iHeartRadio.
Dude, that's you, Elizabeth Dutton.
Dude, it's me.
I got a question for you, Elizabeth Dutton.
Zaron Burnett, lay it on me.
Do you know what's ridiculous?
You know I know what's ridiculous.
I know you do.
Okay, so you know how furries rub me the wrong way?
Yes, it's a fun way of putting it, but yes.
And you know, it's like, that's a me problem. That's not a them problem.
Sure, yeah.
You know, that's a me problem. But Marsberry on Instagram sent something that was forwarded to me, and I feel like it was an act of war.
Act of war?
It
How
was
so?
an aggressive thing to send this.
On Marsberry's part?
To pass it along, because this is worse than a furry.
Oh, wow.
It's okay. So this story is from
Pray tell.
2023. There's this Japanese man who had a long-haired collie suit made for himself.
Oh.
Which are it's called like a rough collie, so like Lassie. So he spent more than like 10,000 euros, more than $10,000.
Lifelike collie suit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he wanted to realize his dream of transforming into a rough collie. His name is Toko.
So he's out there looking like Lassie.
Dude, I'm going to show you these pictures.
Yeah.
So Toko, it took him 2 years. He went to this company, Zeppet, Zeppet.
Let me get a pen. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
write it down. They create realistic costumes and models for films. And so he was like, hey, make me a collie
He's
costume.
like, you guys made the Predator. Can you make me a dog?
He said he's always wanted to, quote, since I was a kid, I've always wanted a makeover. Well, son, there are other ways to
I don't think you know what makeover is.
When I'm wearing my suit, I feel happy because my dream turns into reality. So that's quoting Toko there.
Okay. I'm sure that sounds like far better in Japanese.
Every now and then he goes out on the street in this. But he doesn't like to, because crowds gather.
Out on the street.
People pull, there's this lady who pulls him around in a cart, or he stands there, or sits. People come up and take pictures and hug on him.
So he's
a real
doing
dog
postures. He's sitting on his knees, hands in front of him. Oh my!
There, I'm showing you the picture right now.
Oh,
I'm gonna have him put this on the Instagram stories.
When she's dragging him in the wagon.
Yeah, and
the
then he's
crossing
lays
Abbey
on
Road.
his back, showing for the belly rubs.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so
That's commitment
he's
to
got
the
a
bit.
YouTube channel and the TikToks and stuff. Everyone, is fascinated by him. Me, I'm repulsed.
Why are you repulsed?
He doesn't tell about his life or
He's not putting you in the fursuit. Now that would be
it is so
repulsive, I imagine.
Looking at these pictures, it's so uncomfortable.
Why?
I don't know. It's a me problem, Zaron.
I get that. I'm not suggesting that you're judging the man, but why does it make you uncomfortable?
He also, it's not just that he loves collies. He loves Malamutes and Huskies and Golden Retrievers. And he's we're not even going to entertain that query. And he said he's open to getting other suits.
He's open to getting.
Sure, why not?
So he has other makeovers in mind.
I guess, but it's
if you were to wear an outfit that made you look like an animal, is there any animal that you'd be like, that'd be kind of fun if the suit was convincing?
No.
None. So it's not about the fur or the scales or the feathers issue.
I run hot. I would get so sweaty.
Let's say it has absorbency on the inside and a cooling system.
Well, and I don't like things touching me.
Okay, let's say it also has a lattice system, so it's floating.
And I would be so irritated with myself.
Just disgusted with yourself.
I'd be all, look at you, Elizabeth. You're so precious. You're so quirky. Get out of here. I mean, if I could transform into an actual animal.
Okay, well, yeah.
Never to return to human form?
That's a different question.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a totally different question.
Well, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It is.
I'm rooting for Toko.
I'm not.
Elizabeth.
And no offense to those who are.
Only offenses to you.
It's a me problem.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a me problem.
The only one who should be offended is you.
And that is what's happening.
By you.
That is what is 100% happening right now.
Elizabeth, we've talked about smuggling drugs before.
We have.
I mean, naturally, because some drug busts are just
common
they're
topic.
just strange fun.
Yeah.
And okay, for instance, we've talked about when tough guy actor Robert Mitchum got busted because he was a jazz-loving, reefer-smoking hepcat.
Right? I remember that. Great party.
We talked about Lord Buckley, the high priest of bebop with his free-floating Church of the High Cosmic Truth.
Great parties.
Yeah, and his misadventures with the law in L.A. in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Then there was the Brothers of the Eternal Sunshine, the former biker gang turned outlaw surfer drug smugglers.
Yep.
There's so many others we've covered, but Because I know that we both love a drug smuggling story,
Sure.
I've got another one for you.
No.
But today I wanted to pirouette on this theme
Oh, I like
and tell
that.
you a story about amateur drug smuggling gone wrong.
Oh no.
Well, that's kind of a reach to call this a story of drug smuggling.
Okay.
So, but that's exactly what happened. Drugs were smuggled. Busts were made.
Mistakes were made.
What I'm saying is today I want to tell you a hep little tale about some muggle-smoking daddy-o who got caught flat-footed by the fuzz when the beat suddenly stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a jazz and reefer story, baby.
Hell yeah.
How about the late, great jazz drummer Gene Krupa?
No.
This is Ridiculous Crime, a podcast about absurd and outrageous capers, heists, and cons. It's always 99% murder-free and 100% ridiculous.
Yeah.
Jazz hands.
Jazz.
Elizabeth.
Just jazzing over here.
What do you know about Reefer Madness?
Like the film?
Yeah. Like the OG film, yeah. Like I had to have you ever seen it?
No, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen it. I've seen it as like a novelty, like the posters and such.
Sure, yeah.
Where people have it like on a T-shirt. Mm-hmm. Like, ooh,
in
Reefer
film.
Madness, man. All right.
So you smoke pot, huh?
Yeah, I'm quirky. I smoke pot.
So, well, for purposes of research for this, I started to watch it, but that film is unwatchable. Oh my God, is it
really?
bad? Yeah, it's so bad, it sucks. But the trailer is hilarious, so I watched that a couple times.
Okay.
And I have some highlights from that for you.
Do tell.
It opens with this narrator soberly intoning, "These high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently they dance. Innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors." Now then,
Deadly.
cut to a guy who looks like he's tried to assassinate Franz Ferdinand. All right, and this guy's in the closet. He looks like he's like Peter Lorre's Connect, right?
Okay.
And he lights up a joint, and then this gong strikes, so that'll be foreign. And then all of a sudden, the narrator comes back in, "Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell." Right? Now, in case you're wondering how bad the real danger might be in 1938, the narrator warns viewers, "In this film, you will see the ease with which this vicious plant can be grown in your neighbor's yard, rolled into harmless-looking cigarettes, hidden in an innocent shoe or watch case." I love hidden in an
What did
innocent
the shoe ever do to deserve this?
But that's not all, Elizabeth, because the music then shifts to violins and strings, right? Because now we're past
high strung, tense.
Oh no, not like Hitchcock.
Oh,
more
like swooping.
Eat Love. Yeah, we cut to the lovers, right?
Hubba hubba.
Exactly. No, and then the narrator comes back in with, "In this startling film, you will see dopesters lure children to destruction." Now, later in the trailer, the narrator warns Mr. and Mrs. America and all the ships at sea that smoking the soul-destroying reefer, they find a moment's pleasure. So he's talking about the couples with the strings, right?
Okay.
So we cut to this 30s couple, they're canoodling on the Chesterfield, and AKA the sofa, right? And later, as these main dopesters listen to the main dopester, I guess, basically, he's listening to this girl play jazz piano, and he's puffing on the demon weed.
Yeah.
And he's taking real long pulls on this the jazz cabbage, right? And he has this semi-possessed look on his face, like a raving man, the way someone pictured madness in the 19th century, or I guess the early 20th century.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, back to the narrator. Oh, he's talking over this raving guy. "And the ultimate end of the marijuana addict, hopeless insanity." And then we see the same dopester repeating the stoned out mantra to himself. "Play faster, play faster, play faster."
Oh yeah, that's exactly
right?
what happens when people smoke weed.
Exactly. They turn into little Peter Lorre's. Now, what I love is that this woman on the piano puffing away also on a giant hooter of her own.
Yeah.
It's she isn't playing boogie woogie or stride piano like Fats Waller or Jelly Roll Morton, which would have been more appropriate. No, she's playing, and she's not playing Count Basie or Benny Goodman, which would have been really the music of the time. She's playing like Bartok, like Bela Bartok classical music, just really fast.
God.
She's jamming through this classical piece. Anyway, that's the attitude around marijuana among the straights in 1930s, just
Little
before
did they
World
know.
War II.
They'd be like, now witness the wine mom.
Exactly.
Eat a gummy after the tennis tournament.
Turn Grandpa onto pot for the first time. Look at him giggle and smile. Now, let's just say the war did not change how America's view of the demon marijuana was going, right? So as we started turning from isolationist America before World War II to like, oh, let's look at the international stage. As the country, we were like, oh, we're still afraid of like all these foreign people. So they started demonizing pot with all the same aspects before. It was like, oh, let's blame Asia, let's blame Mexico. So that's the idea. Now, who terrified America of weed? Who was it? 2 names, Elizabeth. 2 names.
2 names, Cheech and Chong.
Very good. Good guess. No, William Randolph Hearst and Harry J. Anslinger.
Well,
we've talked about
pals.
Yeah, we've talked
You're
about
pals.
Harry J. Anslinger before, but first, William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah.
Doing research for this, I wanted to see what the contemporary commentary was like. Like, what were William Randolph Hearst's like peers saying about him instead of people looking back now?
Sure.
What were they saying then? So, Elizabeth, I found some old newspapers because I know you love that. I found this political cartoon because I love that, and it kind of said it all. Right? It's a critique of Hearst's yellow journalism. It's this lampoon of the scare campaigns that he was like always trying to sell.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was about reefer madness. So if you notice, there's this cartoon. There's an illustration of William Randolph Hearst standing hunched over a sales counter at like a drugstore, like he's the pharmacist, but more like a patent medicine man. Anyway, so what is he offering? Great question, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'm so glad I asked.
There's a sign behind him, and it reads, "Dope journalism, escape truth and reality. Ask for my latest mixtures. Hypocrisy and sophistry for every occasion. 30 years experience, editorials to produce paralysis of thought." And then there's my favorite line, right? They're just hitting them.
Yeah.
Below the sales line is added this little added sign, like, they'd hook on signs like back in the day. So it's like venom and hatred to kill labor unions, endorsed by big industries.
Oh my God.
Right? The cartoon is called The Man Who Opposes the Sale of Dope, and by artist Art Young, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, right? I thought so. Elizabeth, here's what it looks like. Here's the cartoon.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So, you see how it's like, it's very early 20th century illustration style, but effective. I mean, they just nail them with all the stuff. Well, anyway, the cartoon was critical of 2 key threads in Hearst's attack against cannabis, right? Because first, it's the racist fear-mongering, right? The unquenchable capitalistic greed. These are his 2 big, right?
Right.
He's a fat cat, Elizabeth. In your words, he was violently wealthy.
Yes, he was.
And he used his wealth to do violence to the causes that he despised and personally opposed. For instance, marijuana, a.k.a. cannabis. Now, keep in mind, William Randolph Hearst is why we call it marijuana.
Oh, really?
Yes. He was a newspaper publisher, right? So he was able to shape narratives and craft what the American minds were like feeding on. And so, well, let me put it this way. What does a newspaper publisher require to make his money?
Ad sales.
Well, yes. But at the most basic level, paper.
Yeah.
Like being an industrialist, Hearst owned paper companies. He was big in the lumber business.
Right.
Which also meant he saw industrial hemp as a threat. It was a cheap fiber, and if it reached industrial scales, which it looked like it was about to do, he saw that as a threat to him as a lumber baron.
Yeah.
So what does a newspaper man need to make his money also? Well, obviously, news. And sometimes if there isn't the sort of news that would sell papers, a cunning newspaper man like him, he invents it. He makes it up. He's like, this is happening, maybe. I don't know. What's happening? So he pushes it, and he invents whole series of news stories. See the Spanish-American War. But then in this case, he does, like, starting in 1914, he starts going against pot. It takes about 20 years to get it to where it's illegal in the country, but he just keeps beating this drum and creates a moral panic, just a one-man moral panic.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to mislead you. Marijuana was an accurate word that was used in Mexico, it's in Spanish-speaking places in the Southwest, but most Americans called it cannabis at the time.
Yeah.
And then he introduced it as marijuana, so it would sound foreign and exotic and scary.
Well, as Peter Tosh said, some call it marijuana.
But also, he was, we think of it, this is like, in reggae terms, right? Like, we think of Rastafarians with weed. He had Hearst had most Americans. Well, here's a quote from one of his newspapers. In 1923, in a Hearst newspaper reported, quote, "Marijuana is a shortcut to the insane asylum. Smoke marijuana cigarettes for a month, and what was once your brain will be nothing but a storehouse for horrid specters." That's in the newspaper, right?
This is your brain on drugs.
Totally. So, with this level of fear-mongering didn't suffice to scare America. Hearst newspapers then upped the foreign exotic angle. So, in 1928, he comes back with his papers have another story. Marijuana was known in India as the murder drug. It was common for a man to, quote, catch up a knife and run through the streets, hacking and killing everyone he encountered.
I'm sorry, but none of their descriptions match up with what I know of what people who are high on weed behave like.
No. If anyone saw anyone ever smoke pot, they're like, I'm sorry, this does not jive.
That is not accord, no.
Yeah. So then we have the second man on the scene who worked just as hard to transform cannabis into marijuana and birth a full-blown nationwide moral panic. His name was Harry J. Anslinger.
Yeah.
All right, now, his wife's uncle gets him a job at the Treasury Department.
Right.
Now, you see, he could do that because his wife's uncle was Andrew Mellon, the Secretary of the Treasury.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, once he hopscotched off some old-fashioned nepotism and landed himself a cushy spot in federal employment, unqualified as he was, Anslinger eventually was named the first director of the Federal Bureau of the Narcotics.
Wow.
They're like, yeah, we got a new department we're going to start. How about
just for you.
This guy?
You know what? It's the more things change, the more they stay the same.
So at this point, he's the man who said to himself, you know what, Mr. Hearst? I don't think you're racist enough. So, I'm not kidding. He didn't actually say that, but he could have.
He could have. Well, that was the subtext.
Yeah, so he saw what Hearst was trying to do, and he decided, I can do that from the federal law enforcement level. So he pushes to rebrand cannabis as marijuana. And he very specifically does this to associate cannabis not with the farmers in the Pacific Northwest who are pushing to make it industrial, but the Mexican dope smokers at the border that the police are like writing stories about in the early 20s.
Sure.
So we know this is the case because Anslinger once said, and I quote, "There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing results from marijuana use. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and others."
God.
I love how entertainers keep getting thrown
the
in
other
there.
minority.
God.
I
think that's code for Jewish. I think that's what that is.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I think that's what that is. I don't know.
Commies.
Or also for actors,
Jewish
just
and
musicians, just generally like, oh yeah, like if you're a Polish saxophone
Creative
player,
types.
you get thrown in there. So it's all right there. Like, so the seeds of a moral panic are taking root, right? And then I read through the transcripts of Harry J. Anslinger's congressional testimony when he was waging his war to make cannabis illegal. And it took, like I said, it took him a while. It took him until 1937. And then they passed the Marijuana Tax Act. Boom, it's illegal. But you'll see that, let's have some fun with this. Elizabeth, I prepared some selections for us to read.
Okay.
You'll be Harry J. Anslinger, and I will be every other congressman on the House and Ways and Means Committee.
Oh, I get to be this little...
Yeah. Now, Elizabeth, you down to do some dramatic recreations?
I am.
Producer D, if you'd be so kind.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Harry J. Anslinger. I am Commissioner of Narcotics in the Bureau of Narcotics in the Treasury Department. Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the Ways and Means Committee, it is known as cannabis, cannabis americana, or cannabis sativa. Marijuana is the Mexican term for cannabis indica. He's good. He knows what he's... We seem to have adopted the Mexican terminology. We call it marijuana, which means good feeling. In the underworld, it is referred to by such colorful colloquial names as reefer, muggles, Indian hay, hot hay, and weed.
Sorry, I got to stop out our drama for a second. Don't you love the names for pot? Like, there are so many silly names for pot.
Hay.
But the pot, hot hay, I have never, ever heard.
I've never heard that, but I'm going to go down to the Harborside dispensary and ask for some hot hay.
Yeah, you guys got the good Indian hay? I want that Indian hay. I mean, like, normally I'm always asking for, like, you guys got any Acapulco Gold? How about some Maui Wowie?
I was going to say.
They're like, sir, it's not the 1970s. I'm like, all right, man. Do you guys have any of that Doobie Brothers?
I'm really, really impressed with myself for reading this without my glasses on.
You look really well. All right,
Thank you so much.
I got one more for you. Here you go.
Okay.
Mr. Anslinger, I want to be certain what this is. Is this the same weed that grows wild in some of our western states, which is sometimes called the loco weed?
No, sir. That is another family.
That is also a harmful drug-producing weed, is it not?
Not to my knowledge. It is not used by humans.
In what particular sections does this weed grow wild?
In almost every state in the Union today.
What are you describing as a plant which is a rather large flower?
No, sir. A very small flower.
It is not Indian hemp?
It is Indian hemp. We have some specimens here.
When was this brought to your attention as being a menace among our own people?
About 10 years ago.
Why did you wait until 1937 to bring in a recommendation of this kind?
10 years ago, we only heard about it throughout the Southwest. It's only in the last few years that it's become a national menace. It has grown like wildfire, but it has only become a national menace in the last 3 years.
So you can kind of hear the tones, right? He's having to sell it to these guys. They want to believe him, but they're like,
Yeah.
I'm not hearing it, sir.
I'm just a simple country boy.
You're talking about flowers in Mexico?
Yeah, Mexican flower. And I love that one's not for human, used by what? So the cows are out there
Well, there's actually
tooting on it?
It's interesting you bring that up because this is about there's a whole thing about hemp seeds being fed to birds, and Harry J. Anslinger was really doubtful that he was super dubious about feeding hemp seeds to bird because this is what I'm talking about industrial hemp. There was a bunch of regulatory logistics that had to be worked out if they were going to prohibit pot because they had industrial hemp, and all these farmers in the Midwest and Pacific Northwest were like, wait, I grow that for fibers and for seed oil, and we send it to China.
Yeah, the omega-3s.
Yes, exactly.
Ooh,
so they
buddy.
were just getting into that, and he's like, no, kill all that, right? So then they're like, well, what about, can we still sell it as bird feed? And they're like, well, here, in the conference on cannabis sativa in the Treasury building on January 14th, 1937, Harry J. Anslinger gets called in to testify about all this new marijuana prohibition laws that they're drafting and would pass later in the year. So let's do some more drama, Elizabeth.
Okay.
You're Harry J. Anslinger again.
Oh, great.
And I will be the various commissioners. Producer D, if you will.
But that doesn't satisfy Commissioner Anslinger because potentially every seed is harmful.
Our experience has been that in almost every large seizure made, we got a large quantity of seed from the defendant for growing purposes.
Well, what would happen if we proscribed the use of seed for bird seed?
Dr. Munch told me it would stop the birds from singing.
Is hemp seed indispensable from bird seed? If Commissioner Anslinger would agree to cut out bird seed, it would certainly help the bill and enforcement.
Can they prove that the birds need this food?
I just love that he's like, I don't even want to feed these birds.
The birds will stop singing.
They got worms.
But then why aren't the birds getting jazzier?
Yeah, exactly, right? It doesn't connect Elizabeth.
not.
And you know this guy does not care about birdsong. Or anyway, enough about Harry J. Anslinger and the irrational hatred of birdseed and his racist war against pot. Because let's take a little break.
Okay.
And after this break, we're going to get into the crime with the bust of the jazz legend, my man, friend of the show, Gene Krupa. Elizabeth.
Zaron.
We're back.
Hey.
Sorry to have to lay all that drama in your lap and
That
have
was fun.
you be
a cold read. That was fun.
Right? Spontaneous theater is one of America's great bigots.
It was really great.
Yeah.
I didn't really get a chance to workshop a voice.
No,
So I know it was all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. It's
but
fun.
Oh well.
For the rest of this episode, you will not have to embody any of America's great bigots.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, next stop, the swing era.
Woohoo!
Right? And we get to know my man, Gene Krupa.
Oh, I love him.
What do you know about Gene Krupa? You're familiar with him?
Great drummer.
Right, yeah. Benny Goodman's drummer. He was the man who played the drums on the big 1937-38 hit, the biggest hit, Benny Goodman's biggest hit, Sing, Sing, Sing.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And that's when it starts with the drums all going crazy.
Exactly.
Now, Krupa was like the first true celebrity drummers. I mean, there was Chick Webb before him. There were drummers who were known in jazz and in music, but he was like nationally and internationally known.
Yeah, and that man could swing.
Oh my goodness, yes, Elizabeth. Now, Krupa came right along right when the culture catches up to jazz, right? When jazz becomes it starts in New Orleans and Storyville, but now by the 30s, it's going to be in Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
Right? So he basically invents what we can also think of as modern rock drumming. I mean, like Keith Moon from The Who, John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, Dave Grohl from Nirvana. None of these guys would be who they are without like a direct
late
line.
Charlie Watts.
The late Charlie Watts. Thank you very much. Right? So like all the really hard playing and tight playing drummers, the jazzy drummers, they all sing his praises, right?
Yeah.
Because the guy, like single-handedly, his playing on Sing, Sing, Sing made the drum solo a serious thing in music.
Right.
Right?
There's a direct line to John Bonham and all that one.
Oh,
too.
100%. Yeah, exactly. With the drum solo. Now, but man, Gene Krupa was born Eugene Bertram Krupa on January 15th, 1909. Baby boy in a family of 9 kids. Raised in Chicago, proud Polish family. In a classic move from back in the day, since he was the youngest boy in a Catholic family, what did that mean? He went off to college to become a priest.
Yep.
So after a year, he decided he didn't want to be a priest. So instead, he became a professional musician. Sure, his family loved that.
Yeah.
So specifically, he became a jazz drummer. So he's like, you sit in the back.
Better.
Yeah.
Even better.
No one can
for the
see
family.
you? Well, maybe that's good, honey. But the guy, I mean, Krupa, he had the rhythm in him, and he got to let it out.
Yeah.
Right? So he gigged around Chicago in the 1920s playing for, like, this is the Al Capone era Chicago gangsters that are his audience.
Oh, yeah.
As well as, like, the hip and the wealthy of Prohibition, and then the working class out to have a good time. So his early jazz influences were men like Bix Beiderbecke. Also, he's like a perfect exemplar of the Chicago jazz sound at the time. Then there's also other local guys like Tubby Hall and Zutty Singleton. And also, not to mention Jimmy Condon and Baby Dodds. Like, what are up with these names?
I will take your word for it.
I love jazz names like I love pot names, right? It's like, they're all the greats. Like Brother Jack McDuff, that's one of my favorite. Groove Holmes.
That's a guy, not a pot name?
Yeah, these are all jazz guys. Like Illinois Jackette, Cannonball Adderley, Dizzy Gillespie.
Dizzy.
My favorite, though, is Rasan Roland Kirk. You know about him? He had a dream. His name was Roland Kirk, right? And he has this dream that he's playing before a crowd, a huge stadium, and they're all chanting, Rasan, 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 after his like triumphant solo. And he's like, oh man, this is awesome. I love this. I love these people. He wakes up, and he calls his manager, and he goes, all right, how do I legally change my name? And he tries to legally change his name to Rasan, and he does. He changes his name to Rasan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's how he got his name.
Oh, totally. He just had a dream, decided I got to change my name. So he does it, but then legally he can't change his name and get his old royalties in his name. So he then has to change his name back, but he doesn't want to change it back. So he changes his name to Roland Rasan Kirk or Rasan Roland Kirk.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah, I love that. Like, has a dream. Like, it's such a jazz story. So anyway, back to the jazz. 1934, Gene Krupa joins Benny Goodman's band. All right. The next year in 35, he walks into a recording studio, lays down his first tracks on wax, and first time with the band, almost instantly, Gene Krupa becomes the star of the show.
Yeah.
First time people hear him, they're like, who is that?
Yeah.
His drums are just that different.
And it's not like anything else. Yeah. Exactly. That.
And you love that. I mean, you're better with music than I am. The sound of his drums were also something he did, as you said, nobody like him before. He played melodies on the drum skins. Yeah. They actually started making tunable drum skins because of him.
Right.
So you could play more melodies. Yeah. That's how good he was. He was the guy who made the standard drum kit. After him, everybody's like, oh, that's the drum kit I want. Like,
well, and it was like a dance. A different mix. Like you look at like Fred Astaire. Mm-hmm. He was like a Fred Astaire percussionist. Like you could see it dancing. Mm-hmm, like you think about like the hard driving drumming of John Bonham, or I always think about Keith Moon sounds like someone kind of tumbling down the stairs.
Totally.
Like, tripping around, but then getting up and being like, I'm okay. Hey! And so it's the animation, the life that he brought into percussion is incredible.
You're spot on. He was wild. I mean, that's really the word for it. The New York Times quoted him in their obituary for him saying, quote, I've succeeded in doing two things. I made the drummer the high-priced guy, and I was able to project enough so that people were drawn to jazz. He was just loud.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So Gene Krupa wasn't just a phenomenal drummer. He was also an incredible once-in-a-generation showman. I mean, the guy, like, as you kind of pointed out, well, he would like sit hunched over his drums. He'd curl around them, right? Then as he starts playing, his hair comes loose, and he was like a handsome guy. And the girls would love how he'd have like a lock of hair dangling over his eye, and he's just dancing there. Yeah. And then more hair comes loose of like his like Brill cream or whatever he's wearing. And then as he continues playing his solo, his body would like unfurl like a blossom, right? And then all of a sudden he's just like stretching in to take in like the sunlight, and he turns into like kind of like how a flower's like in this explosion of beauty. That'd be him, but with sound, right? So then all of a sudden you got these arms going everywhere, and it was insane. It's just like this like visually and musically the same thing. They're both going wild. It's like nobody had seen this.
Like
so,
Animal
what is
and the
this?
Muppets.
Exactly. Totally. So by 1938, Benny Goodman's band is now the biggest band in jazz. They're the coolest. This is, by the way, jazz is the coolest music in America, which makes it the coolest music going in the world. So they're now the best band and the coolest music in the world. That same year, in January 1938, the band plays this epically famous show at Carnegie Hall, right? It's the peak of jazz's climb into the culture. And like, I said, it starts in Storyville, New Orleans, and then boom, they're in Carnegie Hall, because for the longest time it was disparaged. It wasn't called real music, all this stuff. Now it's on Carnegie Hall. Boom, from New Orleans to Carnegie Hall. Now, after this incredible show, their version of Sing, 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 which if you can, go to YouTube and just watch Sing, Sing, Sing live, 1938, Benny Goodman, Carnegie Hall. It's incredible. But Benny Goodman, as a band leader, not exactly a warm and friendly guy.
No.
Yeah, not known to be what you call like...
Not chummy.
Yes, no, not at all. So Krupa was like, you know what? I'm a star. I'm out of here. He got tired of butting heads with him.
Yeah.
So he starts his own big band. He gets some good players. He gets like Roy Eldridge. He gets a talented singer named Anita O'Day. He starts touring. The people love it. They're like, oh, this is great. Yeah, you got rid of that deadweight Benny Goodman. No, not really. But the Jazz Hepcats and the Swing Kids, they're still going kooky for his new band, right? Because of course they did. He's Krupa, right? It's like, so basically now as the 30s give way to the 40s and swing is still like the thing, Gene Krupa is up there at the mountaintop, Elizabeth. And, well, you know what that means. There's nowhere else to go but where?
Down, down, down.
1942 rolls around. Gravity grabs hold of Gene Krupa.
Oh.
Gives a good hard yank. Interestingly, he has a lot happen. He gets divorced. He gets busted. It's more than one calendar year. Yeah. But it's 1 year of time. Anyway. Sure. Interestingly, he gets busted in where? San Francisco.
Oh,
you don't see that coming. He Lenny Bruced it. He was like, basically. Man. So in 1942, it's the war years. So World War II is kicking, right? That means for a professional band leader who's nowhere near the front, the war is still touching him directly because for Krupa, he keeps losing musicians when they get drafted.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And he's also got, it's really hard to, like, keep people on the road, and then the people show up and they're like desperate, and people are a little tense, there's fights, it's a lot. And then like they're having to pay cabaret taxes or cabaret card fees. It's like a whole deal. So he's constantly having to replace band members as his primary challenge, though, but he's making it work. 1942, he's still king of swing. Everybody's like excited to see him. And like I'm trying to say, these kids, they would stand hard for their jazz heroes. Like, I mean, just imagine how they did for the Beatles. They do that for Krupa just a little bit less because they're wearing all wool.
Yeah.
So at this point, his manager, Lou Zito, he tells this one story. He says, and I quote, "No one goes near Gene for at least half an hour after stage show. He's completely exhausted and soaked to the skin." So he makes sure that nobody bothers the star. And now that's how hard he plays. I mean, he's like playing like a hockey player sweats in a game, right? But as a jazz drummer.
That's like us when it's hot out. And we don't have any AC here in the studio. And,
because of the noise,
And then we're just wiped out. We're like, don't talk to me.
I'm like, give me my towel and my robe.
Yeah, I just roll away down the hill. You're just soaked.
So the manager, Lou Zito, he also had another little story explaining like what Gene Krupa would do when he came off the stage just dripping, exhausted. He said, and I quote, "As he comes off the stage, he's wrapped in a heavy bathrobe. In the dressing room, he undresses, is wrapped in heavy bath towels, and he rests until completely dry. Then he showers and gets a rub down." Huh. Nice routine. Every night.
That is a pretty good routine.
Now, typically, his wife, Ethel, would have traveled with him. She liked to be near Gene. He liked her to be near him. But she didn't like how his fans would go so crazy over him and scream and act wild and so forth. She was a little more of a demure, quiet lady. And she also liked to, be there to keep the fans from slipping into his hotel room.
Yeah,
right?
I could see the need for that. Yeah.
So anyway, on that leg of the West Coast tour, she wasn't there in San Francisco for the show. The couple was separated at the time. Technically, they had divorced the year earlier.
Okay.
But they were still in contact and they're trying to make it work. It was like, does this got to take? Maybe we could like undo this. Like they were like, anyway.
Well, and it's like, God, that the life of a jazz musician
who's blown up. Nobody sees the jazz drummer becoming world famous star. She's like, I married the drummer. I thought I was good.
Right.
So it basically also didn't help, though, like when they were trying to get back together, when the tabloids and fan magazines would like catch him like out with like the hottest starlet at the time, Lana Turner, snap a photo, put it on the magazine. His wife's like, how hard are you trying?
Right, exactly.
So, and also life on the road is not easy. I mean, I'm not trying to excuse any infidelities. I'm not talking about that. That's between the married couple. I just mean life on the road, like eating. Like,
It's exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. It's Krupa put it. That life was so full of greasy spoons and bad food, you yearned for a night off. And when you got it off, you'd get so drunk you wouldn't know what was going on anyway. I used to look at the lighted windows of the houses and yearn for that same kind of life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is not a guy who's going, he's crazy on stage, but not crazy off stage. Right? So kind of he drinks hard.
Right.
But he's like the guy who contemplated becoming a priest, but he couldn't say no to the siren calls of jazz music.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not to say he wasn't living the good life, Elizabeth. Krupa most certainly was
I
doing
would imagine,
that.
yeah.
When he rolled into the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco, he brought with him 3 full trunks of custom clothing.
Oh, wow.
He had 15 different camel hair coats.
Oh, God.
Custom.
Could you imagine this fits? I'd love to see them.
He had a valet, like a personal valet or valet, just to handle his clothing, dressing him, and doing the maintenance of his clothing. More on that personal valet later. But anyway, it's January 20th, 1943. This headline breaks out.
Dateline, San Francisco, January 20th, 1943. Gene Krupa is arrested. He denies he sent boy to get marijuana cigarettes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so let's back up. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
In order to truly dive into this scene, Elizabeth, I'd like you to close your eyes.
My eyes are closed.
I'd like you to picture it. It's January 18th, 1943. The world is at war. Headlines scream about German tank advances in Europe and the bloody trail of the island-hopping Marines in the Pacific. At the moment, you don't want to think about all those horrors. Instead, you just want to hear some hot jazz from the wildest band leader in the land, Mr. Gene Krupa. At the moment, he's in San Francisco, which coincidentally is where you work as a hat check girl at the Golden Gate Theater. And you are beside yourself, but right now, Gene Krupa and his swing band are playing a week of shows at the Golden Gate Theater. You've watched breathlessly night after night as the crowd rises to thunderous applause when the show concludes with his climactic drum solo. And tonight, it was no different. As soon as the show is over, the crowd erupts in tremendous applause. And you watch the band leader as he bounds off stage. He's so wet with sweat, he looks like he just took a shower in his clothes. He brushes past you where you lurk backstage, and he wets your shoulder as he passes. What a show he puts on, you think to yourself as Krupa brushes by. He gives you a friendly smile, even though he looks exhausted. You turn and watch him go, and that's when you spot the same suspicious men also lurking around backstage you saw earlier. There's now 3 of them. They follow Krupa to his dressing room. The door opens, he goes in, the 3 men go in, and his personal valet follows them all. The door shuts. A moment passes, then the door opens. You see the personal valet step out, he looks around. He seems worried, but also a little confused. He's young, perhaps out of his depth. He sees you watching him, but you quickly look away. And then you look back when the dressing room door opens again, and you spot Gene Krupa. He's now wearing a robe, but he's ashen-faced. He looks like someone just told him he has just days to live. He speaks with his personal valet in whispered tones. You can't hear what they say, but you do see the personal valet nod and then turn to go in a rush. You watch as he tries to slyly walk off backstage past the passersby. You also spot the 3rd suspicious man as he turns and follows the kid out the stage door. That's when you turn back, not wanting any trouble, because with the war on and all the reports of enemy saboteurs, you decide you'll mind your own business. These guys seem like feds. You go back to the hat check stand. Now that the show's over, people will want their hats and coats, but you're still super curious. What made Gene Krupa look like his life just ended? Well, Elizabeth, boom, there you go. You just witnessed the first act of the bust of Gene Krupa.
Oh, no.
After these messages, we'll get back to see how justice plays out for the jazz man. Elizabeth.
Zaron.
How we swinging the jam on this one, Sister Clyde?
Oh, my goodness.
You digging the downbeat?
I am digging it, Daddy-O.
Let's get back to it. As we covered, thanks to William Randolph Hearst causing a nationwide moral panic about cannabis, which his papers renamed marijuana to make it sound foreign and scary, in order for him to make profits selling papers covering the moral panic, while also protecting his profits as a lumber baron.
In the transcripts you had me read, I like how it's spelled with an H.
That's how they used to spell it. Marijuana. Yeah. So people would say it correctly.
Yeah, instead of marijuana.
They weren't used to the J being Spanish.
Yeah.
That's new to them. So they were like, just spell it English style.
Right.
Spell it how you want people to say it. So, and also, I forgot that obviously there's Harry J. Anslinger. We cannot forget about him.
Cannot.
The nepotism hire, who becomes the first director of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, who then joins Hearst for the fight against pot, and also adds in his flavor of racism. Right. So back to the jazz age craziness.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, most of this is aimed at the black jazzmen.
Right.
That's where they really would like to bust. And they're having some success. They're harassing. They're about to really drive Billie Holiday absolutely into a hospital.
Right.
So they're not just focusing on him. But if they could get a cautionary tale to show these white kids where the demon weed will lead you, that would be ideal.
Right.
Enter Gene Krupa.
Oy.
So the federal narcs, basically, they wanted to bust the coolest men in the world. That's who the white jazz men were for the jazz kids that they were trying to communicate with through the bust. So they're like, well, who's the coolest? Well, let's bust him.
Let's get him.
So this author, David Solomon, he framed in his book, The Marijuana Papers, that the Bureau of Narcotics, the director, Harry J. Anslinger, he used his position in government and his authority as an expert in the field to spread all sorts of wildly incorrect propaganda. But the American press were like, well, he's an expert. So they would just eagerly and uncritically report his quotes. And so it becomes the record then when you go to Congress, you can then quote yourself in the paper.
Right.
It's this cycle. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they're basically repeating whatever he says about satanically destructive drug, right? They're like, put that in the paper. Should we capitalize Satan? So anyway, basically the press functioned as his megaphone. So that's how jazz music and the crazed swing kids and musicians, they all get a target on their backs because, and especially the man they revere, Gene Krupa, it's the anti-pot paranoia, right? So as Solomon puts it in his book, and I quote, the American public, fed by this steady stream of anti-marijuana propaganda, had reason to believe much of what it read. The evidence was right before them. Swing, music, and its culture appeared to embody all of the dangers of the drug published in the press. One only had to listen to the hot tom-tom rhythms of Benny Goodman's Sing, 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 or watch the uncontrolled antics of a jitterbug trucking on the dance floor as proof that something had taken hold of American youth. It was easy to blame the marijuana menace. So there you go. That's the tone, the marijuana menace. Now, comically, the jazz guys are putting out songs that are like the chant of the weed, or there's the Texas Tea Party. There's another song called Reefer Man. I mean, so they're able to quote from these songs in the newspaper and then use that to scare people with like, jazz is clearly the devil's own music.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth, the whispers were in the wind, right? Those who were listening, they knew the feds would eventually find the perfect person to frame as their cautionary tale.
Sure.
In fact, Downbeat magazine tried to warn the community. In 1938, the magazine wrote, and I quote, one of these days, say those close to the situation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation will investigate the claim that the marijuana weed is promiscuously used and smoked by players of swing music. The idea that weed, which is supposed to have first been taken hold of by low-down musicians in Harlem dives, is now spreading to the bigger bands where instrumentalists now use it to emit the wild, abandoned rhythms which comprise swing music, is said to be arousing interest at J. Edgar Hoover's headquarters. Whether it is true or not, the FBI is convinced that there is a good deal to the rumors which they have heard, and they are planning an investigation, allegedly, which may one day treat the U.S. to an expose which will rock the music world. It's all over the place.
It's all over.
Right? But it was kind of a war. I mean, you do hear, though, subtly, always like the Harlem dives.
Yeah,
Yeah, the abandoned rhythms of like jungle rhythms from the dark heart of Africa. It's all that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, finally, they can get their target. The fateful day comes 5 years later, 1943, in the Golden Gate Theater in San Francisco.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is how when Gene Krupa gets popped for pot possession, he's arrested by federal agents.
Yeah.
And then he's not brought up on federal charges. Instead, he's handed over to the San Francisco police. Like, they're like, here,
really?
You make a show of him. We know you guys rough people up.
Right?
Because the San Francisco police at the time were known for being head beaters.
That's at the same time that they were busting a little bit later where they busted William Bawalda for shaking Emma Goldman's hand.
Exactly. The San Francisco police were known as like some tough Irish cops at this point.
Yeah.
So they didn't go for this nonsense. Well, you're smoking the pot, hey. The San Francisco press was also happy to help. So because make no mistake, Gene Krupa getting busted for pot was big news in 1943.
Well, you got a Hearst paper up in there.
Yes, you do. Thank you very much. San Francisco Examiner reported on the arrival of Gene Krupa in town on January 14th. There's plenty of excitement going on at the Golden Gate. Gene Krupa's band is hitting the deck, and it hits like lightning. All right, that's 1943, January 14th.
Yeah.
They also wanted to, hype this rare showman, so the Hearst newspaper puts in glowing terms. Tousle-headed drummer Krupa, who sits like an affable spider in his web of drums, making his two arms act like six, is an authentic jazz artist, which is a rare thing for a white musician.
Oh.
They just put a little tail on that one. Now, the smash cut to 1 week later, January 21st, the same Hearst newspaper, San Francisco Examiner, gleefully reports on the front page with a quote, Gene Krupa linked to dope case. So they're making the profits on the way up and the way down. They don't really care.
Exactly.
The opening sentence gets right to it. Quote, idol of countless young jitterbugs throughout the nation, Gene Krupa, noted swing drummer and band leader, was arrested here last night by federal narcotics agents on charges of contributing to the delinquency of a minor by permitting a 17-year-old boy to transport narcotics.
Huh.
Yeah, so they really they got a story that's going to sell some papers at this point, right? So the other new paper of the city, the major paper of the city, San Francisco Chronicle,
correct,
the one you like, went with a slightly more prosaic headline. They went with, Gene Krupa arrested here in juvenile dope case. You don't even quite know what's going on in that headline.
No, but it's a little bit, I think it's almost worse.
Is the dope case young? Are we waiting for the dope case to mature? So, Elizabeth, back then, there was no different than today. The ugly allegations of drugs and kids and the devil's own music made this small-time bust into a big-time national news story.
Yeah.
Everyone got to speculate. What's Gene Krupa doing with kids in San Francisco and drugs? So most of the stories were like dope and delinquency, right?
Yeah.
That's what they really pushed.
Yeah.
So what doesn't get widely reported is that there are no charges against Gene Krupa for possession of narcotics or for drug use, any of that. Huh. It's just delinquency of a minor, which is a much uglier term in the press.
Sure.
So rather than read some more moral panic news stories, Elizabeth, let's hear Gene Krupa's version of events.
Yes, let's.
It's much better than the other nonsense. Here's how Krupa tells the story of his pot bust and how his young valet got him pinched. And I quote, by then, I was a glamour boy, 15 camel hair coats, 3 trunks around me all the time, and he couldn't think what to get me. Finally, he thought, gee, I'll get Gene some grass. At that time, California was hot as a pistol. You could park your car for a bottle of beer and get arrested. So we had a rough time getting the stuff. He probably shot his mouth off a little. I'm getting this for the greatest guy in the world, Gene Krupa. So the kid was going around L.A., the city they were in before they went to San Francisco, and he was trying to get pot for Gene Krupa because that's where the kid got hired, was in L.A., just before they came to San Francisco. Oh. This is like basically his first day on the job.
Oh,
so
no.
I'll tell you more about him in a second. The rest of the story from Krupa we'll get from his lawyer, and this is how the lawyer wrote in his memoir years later. He says, this is Krupa talking, and I quote, I wouldn't con you, master. I don't know a damn thing about this caper. First time I pick up on the fact it's marijuana that's got them bugged is when the fuzz lay the story on me after they dropped the net on Johnny. They tell me he picked up the muggles in my suite, and I come all unzipped. That's a scene I don't dig, Jake. T, goofballs, Benny, all that kind of funny, quick energy. I don't need it. I got me. That's plenty. If the kid had muggles, I sure don't know where he got it.
Oh, my God. It's like, excuse me, stewardess, I speak jazz.
Yeah, right. So
goofballs.
What's the real story here? Like, just who was his personal valet? Was he legit? Was he a Fed plant there to get Krupa stitched up?
A hapless intern?
Was he a hapless intern? Good read, kid. So Krupa, as I said, barely knew him. His name was John Patiokos. He was 20 years old. He was one of those jitterbug kids. He lived for swing music.
Yeah.
He played drums himself. He idolized Krupa.
Wait, and he was 20?
20 years old.
And they kept saying
they reported at 17. Yes. See, he was not a minor. There was no delinquency of a minor. So he graduated high school back in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and then he was all about that jazz, right? So he jitterbugged his way over to New York, and then he was like, oh, I gotta go hightailing my way over to Chicago, and then he kept, swing bop dancing over to L.A. Working as an usher at the Palladium Theater in L.A., this excitable kid strikes up a friendship with Krupa's personal valet, who's also a young man, and while the band is playing a series of shows there, like 2 weeks of shows, right? So at this point, World War II is kicking, right? It's in full bloody flourish the whole
Krupa
time.
show in L.A. at this time?
Yeah, at the Palladium Theater. It's crazy, right?
Ooh, pal, that's going to be amazing.
Swing. So Krupa's personal valet, as I said, young man, he gets drafted. And he gets his draft. He's like, So he's like, he's buddied up with this kid, John Patiokos. He's like, hey, kid, you want to be the valet? So the kid gets hired in L.A. and he takes the trip north with them to San Francisco. After his first thing is trying to get this pot for, and then he gets it in an envelope and he shoves it in his jacket. And then when the bust happens, he's like, oh, by the way, remember that pot I put in your jacket? And that's what they were whispering about when you saw them. He was giving them, they're like, hey, there's pot in your clothing. The feds should probably not see that. So yeah, he gets really stitched up by his valet. Yeah, anyway, so what's this kid's story and all this, right? As the personal, the gopher for the band leader, he's just hanging around waiting for Krupa to have some need for him. That's his job. So doing that, he's hanging around. He sees these suspicious men also there at the Golden Gate Theater, and it turns out they are federal narcs, and they are the ones who end up busting him because they're also watching this kid.
Yeah.
So he's watching them, they're watching him. The way the kid tells it, the story goes, as Gene came off the stage, soaking wet as usual, these three men walked over to him and they said they wanted to talk to him. They walked Gene into his dressing room and I walked in right after them. I felt something was wrong. They told me to leave the room. I looked at Gene, who nodded approval, but he had a very particular expression on his face. I felt then that something was going to happen. I waited outside the dressing room for quite a while. Gene finally came out, pale as a ghost, and still soaking wet, although he still had his robe on. He was all shaken up and excited. He motioned to me to go with him, and now I was all excited myself. So we started to walk toward the washroom, and Gene seemed unable to talk at first, but finally he said to me, Johnny, I want you to do something for me. And before he could say another word, they broke up the conversation. And then they walked Gene back to his dressing room, and they left me standing there alone. So what does the kid do?
Yeah.
He knows he needs to do something for his drum hero.
Right.
And remember, he's an excitable jitterbug kid.
He is.
So he's got these G-men threatening his hero, so he's going to save his hero.
Yeah.
So he decides, I'm going to go save him from the feds. So back to Patiokos. Right then and there, I thought, I know what Gene wanted me to do. He was a nice guy, and I wanted to help him. So I ran as fast as I could back to the hotel, and I tried to get Frank Vinier, that's Krupa's manager, on the phone. But it was busy. I finally got a bellhop to let me in, and I took an envelope of cigarettes out of the pocket of his coat in the closet and left the room. Then I remembered that there were also a few cigarettes in a drawer on the writing desk. So I returned to the room, and I took those cigarettes out of the drawer, and I put them in the envelope, and I left the room. And then that's where he walked out of Gene Krupa's hotel room and right into the arms of the waiting Fed, who had followed him out of the Golden Gate Theater. Because this kid was so jitterbug excitable, he didn't even think that the Fed might follow him and just watch him go.
Well, it's a little suspicious that they whisper to each other and then he runs off.
Exactly.
Of course, yeah.
So one of the Feds, they take him back now to the other Feds, and the kid won't cooperate. He will not talk to them, right? So back to Patiokos. After quite a while trying to make me say something, the agents took me over to their office alone. There, they really gave me the works. They pushed me around and threatened to hit me with a blackjack and beat me up if I still refused to talk, and furthermore, would put me in jail for possession of the cigarettes. So when the kid won't betray his jazz man hero, the cops then trick him by saying, it wouldn't make any difference to Gene because he would be in exactly the same trouble anyway if I didn't say anything. So the kid signs a confession that Gene Krupa asked him to go to his hotel room and grab his pot and bring it back to him. And that's that the Krupa then had made the kid his drug mule.
Yeah.
The charges are flimsy as hell, right? But they sound terrible in the press.
Oh, 100%.
So the trial starts. San Francisco DA decides to make it a show trial and get a little fame for himself. He throws the law book at Krupa, right? But he has one problem. Star witness is missing. Patiokos disappears.
Oh, he does.
He won't testify against Krupa.
He's
gone.
Well, he already ran the risk of snitching there.
And signing a confession. So all they have to do is what they do. They go in and just read the confession.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, So both sides, though, allege that the other side is hiding him and have bribed him to leave town. Everyone's like, you got rid of him. No, you got rid of him. So because they both, I don't know, think somehow he's going to help them make their case.
Yeah.
So, you know what, Elizabeth? I got a little more fun for you because here I would like you to be a federal agent on the witness stand.
Oh.
And I'll be Leslie Gillen, the assistant DA who's prosecuting Gene Krupa.
Okay.
So, you ready?
Is it common knowledge that marijuana is frequently used because of its definite propensity for distorting time by so-called hot musicians, jazz musicians?
Yes.
And that is so they can beat the drums or play a cornet or trombone without feeling the effect of doing it?
That is right.
I'm sorry, but I just love asking a narc who's apparently knowledgeable at the interiority of jazz drummers and cornet players. Like, what when Big Spiderbeck is on the jazz stand, what is he thinking? I mean, like, what does this guy know?
As a federal agent, tell me.
So Krupa takes the witness stand, and the ADA grills the pot-fueled drummer, right, and asks him like how he makes his rhythms hit and sing. And Krupa then says from the witness stand, a man's ability to beat his drums faster than someone else's because he has developed his technique to a higher point, and it is easier to play fast than it is for someone to play slow. If I'm able to play faster than someone else, it is because I have studied it and developed my technique. I mean, it's very, very obvious, right?
Right.
That's
exactly.
the same way I can paint houses faster. But then he added, in his opinion, the only whack drummers are the ones who did rely on drugs and to get loose. As Krupa put it, it might be true of hot bands playing in dives, but that it would be impossible for members of a prominent band to habitually use marijuana in view of the split-second timing on radio and the need for self-possession on the stage.
Yeah.
So he's basically saying, like, I got to be too cool for school for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I gotta have my wits about me.
Yeah, so Krupa also emphasized that, in his opinion, only drummers in small numbers, the failures, all of them, used the weed, right? But then he admitted that he was somebody who used the weed. Later in his testimony, he's like, that I also used the weed. I did smoke the pot. And so they got him. The trial concludes, despite the star witness never appearing in court. Elizabeth, what do you think the trial verdict was?
Guilty.
Yes. On June 30th, 1943, a jury of his peers finds Krupa guilty of the delinquency of a minor. He's sentenced to 1 to 6 years in San Quentin State Prison.
What?
Yes. I told you, moral panic.
Wait,
you're not going
delinquency
to scare people with the 1 to 6 years.
Delinquency of a 20-year-old minor?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the kid's gone. They can't confirm the age.
Yeah.
So at this point, he thought, man, my career is over. Dunzo, daddy-o.
Yeah.
But his lawyer is like, I can appeal the sentence. So headlines are meanwhile announcing that there's been a development in the case. Like a month later, the missing star witness, the jitterbug kid, the personal valet, John Patiokos, is found alive and well.
Oh, thank God.
In Los Angeles. FBI found the kid because why? He was on the lam from Selective Service. He'd gotten his draft card and cut.
That's why
he didn't want to get drafted.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so he didn't want to go off to war. So it seemed like this would help Krupa's appeal because now they can confirm he is not a minor because if he's old enough to go to war, he's not a minor.
Right.
So in the meantime, Krupa works with his lawyer who he thinks he's in good hands because it's Howard Hughes' lawyer. It's Errol Flynn's lawyer. He's like, I want to be in like Flynn.
Yeah.
Right? So, nope, doesn't happen. He appeals his case. All in all, Krupa spends 84 days in San Francisco County Jail.
What?
But he never gets sent to San Quentin because after enough time passes, the people feel like, okay, we got what we wanted. We've scared everybody.
Served. Yeah,
he doesn't really matter. We got the headlines. We got the story.
But he sat in county for this.
So as he waited to hear his fate on the state charges, his fellow jazzmen all rallied around Krupa.
Yeah.
In fact, even though he'd split from Benny Goodman, and because of all the personal tensions, Goodman reaches out to Krupa while he's down, and the two get back together, and they play their first show together in 6 years.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so in the end, the pot bus was a good thing for jazz music.
It brought them all together.
It brought Krupa and Benny Goodman back together. And it eventually helped Krupa rebuild his career, and then the feds, they couldn't stop the jazz, baby.
That's right.
So now if you were wondering, the unlucky jitterbug, personal valet, John Patiokos, he wasn't able to continue dodging the draft. Once the FBI caught him, they threw him in the service, they sent him off to war, and he survived as a medical corpsman. He was basically like a CO. He was like, I'll heal people, but I ain't shooting no one. So what's a ridiculous takeaway here, Elizabeth? Exactly.
My takeaway is every time we talk about like how villainized marijuana is, it's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, I know nothing is completely harmless, but when I look at like the damage that like alcohol does.
Totally.
Versus, which is just, go for it, according to everybody.
versus weed, and this misnomer of how people are. That they act like it's this stimulant, like it's PCP or like...
They don't know what it is. It's whatever
meth.
they imagine. It's so often
it's
people are
bad.
afraid of what they imagine. They have no experience of the reality, so they're like, oh, it turns people into these sex-crazed lunatics who want to sleep all the time. I'm like, which is it?
Exactly.
They're doing everything. You have them doing everything.
Exactly. And it's like, I don't know, I just kind of feel like if you can't really overdose on something and like... just let people do what they want.
Well, everything's a poison. The dose makes the poison.
Exactly.
Nothing, you can kill someone with water. So there's no such thing as a real true poison. It's how you use something or how much you use.
Right.
So with this, I have the same thing, which is I don't like to legislate morality. I'm like, if a person wants to smoke pot, let them. And then if it doesn't work out for them, we can figure that part out. But like, if it's not impairing their decisions where they're out there like slaughtering people because they're on the drugs, then I don't have a problem with it. Yeah. And I wish people could be more grown up. And we still see the desire to do prohibition. Like, no, stop it. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm like, has that ever worked? No, it hasn't. So we have tons of centuries of history, and yet we still go, this time it's going to work.
Well, and we think about like the dangers of stuff is like, driving under the influence of things. But if we had like walkable cities with lots of third places, it would be a non-issue.
Totally. But also, how about this? It's the responsibility of the driver.
Yeah.
It's the same like if they took too much cold medicine. I'm saying is it's the dose. So it's not the pot that's the problem. It's the person making bad choices and then driving. Because they can make a bad choice with anything. The pot isn't the problem. It's the person making the choice.
It's all about the choices.
The choices.
Darren.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, there I'm doing that. I'm getting off this damn soapbox because it's not ridiculous. Elizabeth, you in the mood for a talk back?
I am always in the mood for a talk back.
Producer D, can you favor us with one?
Oh my God, did he just say that?
OMG.
Elizabeth and Zaron, I want you to close your eyes and picture it. You are 18 years old. You were raised in a conservative Christian household. You weren't sheltered from the media or anything, but you've certainly not had a lot of personal, tangible life experiences, and you are traveling abroad for the first time with your mom in Paris, and you're looking for the Sacré-Cœur, and you get off at the wrong metro station, which is fine. You're in a little bit of a sketchy neighborhood, actually a very sketchy neighborhood, but you just figure, I'll just walk up the hill, we'll find it eventually. And you leave the station and you run into a very handsome man right outside of the fence who is talking at you, yelling kind of, but smiling, friendly, yelling in rapid French. And you have no idea what he's saying because you're a product of the American education system and you know a little Spanish and basically just the numbers and no French at all. So you say, I'm sorry. And he says, oh, English? And you say, yes. And he says, officer, police officer. Is there a police officer? And he points to the train and you say, what? No, I don't think so. And he says, thank you, merci. And then he scales the fence behind you, jumps over the turnstile and jumps onto the train. And you are completely bewildered while your mom stands next to you, laughing hysterically, saying that you've just aided and abetted someone running from the police, but hey, you were very helpful. With your little, I don't think so. And then you proceed to get roasted about that for the next decade of your life. That's it. I hope that was vivid for you.
I was there.
I love that. Aiding and abetting. That's like the best kind of vacation activity.
Totally. You're in Paris and you can get in a little aiding and abetting.
Oh, come on. Yeah, people pay a lot of money to be able to do that.
Yeah, forget an escape room. Help someone escape. Well, as always, you can find us online at Ridiculous Crime on social media. I don't know, look around. And we have the account Ridiculous Crime Pod on YouTube. Go check it out. They're awesome. And we have our website, ridiculouscrime.com. I believe we just won, what was it? E! Magazine's most excited. What was it? I forget the wording. The book they were most excited to read this summer.
E! Entertainment Television's, hey, have you read this book? It's amazing. You should read it.
Thank you. Yeah. It was such a long award. I'm like, really how is this going to be? People are never going to remember this. Yeah. Well, anyway, check out the website. And if you email us if you like it, ridiculouscrime@gmail.com. As always, we will catch you next crime. Thanks for listening. Ridiculous Crime is hosted by Elizabeth Dutton, that's her, and Zaron Burnett, that's him.
That's me.
Produced and edited by Mose Allison's piano teacher, Dave Kusin. And starring Annalise Rucker as Hude, Research is by Betty Carter Fan Club President Marissa Brown. Our theme song is by Jack Teagarden's main man, Thomas Lee. And Travis, they called him Django, Dutton. The host's wardrobe provided by Botany 500. Guest hair and makeup by Sparkleshot and Mr. Andre. Executive producers are Ben. One day, Sun Ra woke up and went bowling. And Noel, please don't call me Downtown Julie, Brown.
Ridiculous crime.
Say it one more time.
Ridiculous crime.
Ridiculous Crime is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.